thank you so much, Jocelyn, for doing this.
Thanks for
This
having
podcast is
me.
about your music or journey in music and how you got to where you are now. And we'll talk about your new record coming out early next year
Yeah.
and the Christmas song that you put
Yeah.
out.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you do psychic readings too?
Yes, I do.
Tell me about that before we get into this. Because
I
that's
knew you
just
were going to ask me about that
yeah, that's
because
just
I'm
so
psychic.
fascinating. Yeah, you knew I was gonna ask.
I love making psychic jokes. They crack me up. Yeah, so that's something that I tapped into a lot more in the last, I'd say about 18 months. But I've always had a connection with the spirit realms and, just being an extra sensory person. Like growing up, I was always told, like, you're too sensitive, and very often I think folks that have that messaging, it's because like literally my senses are on overdrive, right? Because I'm picking
Sure.
up information and, the joke about like the sixth sense, it's like kids can kind of plug into it without really questioning things, or like your dog is standing out the window barking at something you can't see. But yeah, that's kind of how I grew up, just being very aware of things that I couldn't see with my eyes but I knew were real. And so um, coupled with some very specific experiences as a teenager, I
Hmm.
then moved as an adult and had this kind of awakening, really like a switch just flipped, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, this is not just like feeling
Oh, okay.
weird, this is like a thing. And I've just taken classes and learned how to develop it, and truly, like, psychic mediumship is available to all people, and everyone has psychic encounters all the time. Like if you're thinking about a friend and then they call you, or you can just tell like somebody's in a weird mood and you're like, I don't know why, but I'm certain that you're not doing well. Like that's psychic, it's just an
Hmm.
extension of our physical senses. So
That's
it depends
really
on what we want to do
interesting.
with it.
Yeah. Was there like a moment that you decided to really delve in there, like in the last 18 months or something?
That's a great question. Well, I felt a responsibility with, coupled with my music, really, because
Hmm.
Push is an album about healing through radical self-love. And that was something that came about not really on purpose. Like all the
Okay.
songs kind of were collected by different arrangers who they chose from a larger scope of songs that I had sent out as demos, right? So
Hmm.
I had this group of 20 demos, sent it out to a bunch of arrangers because the whole album is arranged for string quartet.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay. We'll
yeah,
talk definitely about this. This is
yeah,
awesome.
well, it's actually it's weirdly related to the psychic thing. So I'm not skirting your question, but
Cool. No, I love it.
uh, I say that to say that I had a bunch of demos, so it was about 20 in the pocket, and being someone who just kind of plays ukulele casually, I wasn't really aching to hear that album. Like lady ukulele album was just like not my thing.
Uh-huh.
So I reached out to a bunch of arrangers and they chose the ones that resonated with them of this
Oh.
batch, right? So what I did after that was to look and say, okay, what's the thread between all of these songs? And that really was the core, was that these were all ones that were about healing
Hmm.
and then through radical self-love. So and this had been going on long, long before I knew I was a medium, the process of creating Push. So then when it finally came down to it, I was like, oh, okay, now I have this album in the works and I've had this spiritual awakening. I feel like it's a continuation of my creative practice to
Hmm.
say, okay, this is an extended level of healing and radical self love that I can open up to people and hopefully just provide some comfort and whatever help I can in this very specific esoteric way. So it just felt like, yeah, it kind of made me make sense to myself
Hmm.
all of a sudden in a new way. And I was like, oh, of course, this is what's happening. Yes, okay. So, I don't
Okay.
know if that makes sense.
No, no, it totally does. I've kind of figured there has to be some connection between the two.
For
And
sure, for
yeah.
sure. And
Well,
also the
well,
songwriting process for me. Sorry to interrupt you.
no, go
Uh,
ahead.
well, it was always also very much like hearing a song kind of floating in the ether, right? And you hear
Mm.
artists talk about that a lot, where it's like, oh, the song existed and I just kind of channeled it.
Hmm.
Or an artist maybe can like hear a full piece
Right.
just that exists and they just have to kind of translate it onto paper. That experience is called clairaudience, right?
Oh,
So when you can
interesting.
hear sounds that aren't being physically played, right? So you think a lot of clairvoyance, which would be like spiritual seeing, like,
Hmm.
oh, I saw a vision. For
Right.
every physical sense we have, there's an extension in the psychic realm.
Huh.
So we can hear from spirit, we can understand from spirit, we can touch from spirit. So I was always having these clairaudient experiences where I would like just hear a song
Uh-huh.
and go, okay, I guess it's this song exists. I just have to, my responsibility is to just get it out.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. Like, wow. Okay.
It's
It's
more
yes.
common than you
Because you,
think, actually.
well, yeah, you do hear that. Like, I don't know. I like knew it was out there, and I just heard the bass line in my brain or whatever. And you're like,
Hmm.
well, how does that really? I don't understand that.
Yeah,
But no, but yeah, you're totally right. That is something you hear quite often, especially with musicians and songwriters.
totally.
Well,
And I think every artist probably has their own experiences of what that means for them, right? Like, I don't know that
mhm,
every artist would say, oh, yeah, that makes me psychic, right? And it maybe does for
right.
some people and not for others. But for me, that's what made sense.
Okay. Well, whereabouts did you grow up?
Weehawken, New Jersey.
Okay, New
and then
Jersey.
and then Westfield, New Jersey. So I split like half and half of my childhood, like inner city to like picturesque suburbia high school
Okay.
experience where like the kids like played soccer after school, and I was like, what is this? Like, I don't understand. Like, that's what kids do in movies. Like, that's not a real
Right.
thing. And like they made casseroles, and I was like, what are casseroles? Like, don't you like go down to the deli? Like, what are you doing?
Right,
It
right.
was really weird.
Okay, so you moved from like more of a city to the suburbs.
Yeah, Weehawken, New Jersey is the city that if you're ever coming out of New York into New Jersey through the Lincoln Tunnel, it's the
Mhm.
city that like the Lincoln Tunnel, New Jersey side is in.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, you know, it's got a vibe.
Sure.
Yeah, it's
Well,
vibing.
how did you get into music?
Oh boy. Well, as a child of two very intense music fans,
Uh-huh.
my father is also an experimental musician. But sorry, I'm just gonna adjust my mic really quick.
Oh, no.
It's drooping.
Take your
There we go.
time.
So yeah, my parents were big music fans, and um, really from the time I was a kid, we would just always be singing. If you could speak it, you could sing it, right? So like,
Mhm.
we're at the dinner table, pass the pepper, pass the salt, we're gonna have dinner. Like it was just constant singing in our house, and I didn't know that that was not a thing that people do, really.
Okay.
So I just kind of started writing songs. I mean, there are cassette tapes of me making up songs when I was 2 and 3 years old.
Wow.
But then, and the first one I have on recording was about brushing my teeth, which is funny because I actually still sing a lot about teeth. I'm like kind of obsessed with teeth. Um, that's a side note. But yeah, I didn't really think about it, so I've just always written songs. I can't really say it any more elegantly than that.
Mhm.
But I started writing kind of a little bit more purposefully to express emotional content when I was about 13. I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
now I'm starting to like get into some teenager stuff, and like
Sure.
mama's got to process her feelings somehow, and that was really what it was. So yeah,
Was
that's
that
kind of
just
it.
writing out like poems or lyrics, or was that like fully trying to write songs?
That's a great question. For me, lyric and melody have always really come very much side by side, like hand in
Okay.
hand. Often I will hear a like a phrase, or imagine an image, and just that as a starting point will kind of create this locked in melody lyric combo that then just
Mhm.
kind of builds on itself. So it's always been pretty intuitive, pretty organic. And then later, maybe deeper into my teens and my early 20s, that's when I kind of started to flex the writing muscle a little bit more and say, okay, rather than just like waiting for the inspiration to strike or for something to kind of just come to me, I'm going to think about, okay, I'm curious about what would it sound like to write a song about a breakup that was framed in an analogy of like Pangea and the dinosaur times, and I want it to sound like a vaudeville act, right? So I would like write that song, like give myself really specific prompts,
Okay.
and try to go from there. So I'm always playing with it. I think play music is like the operative word is play, right?
Okay.
Like it's just really, it's so fun. It's got to be fun.
Yeah. And when in high school or those earlier days, were you playing in bands or doing mic nights or anything like that?
I love that you asked that. I was in a punk band, punk, quote unquote punk, pop punk band
Okay.
in high school with my dear friends Dave Napiorski and Jacob Rosenstein, who I'm still close with, and Andrew, our bass player, I've lost touch with a little bit, but we were called Dorks,
Dorks?
Dorx. That's correct. And we sang a bunch of really funny pop punk songs. And, you know, because we were close enough to New York City that we would just like get on the train from our town. This was when I moved to the suburbs. We would get on the train and like go see like Less Than Jake and like
Sure.
Blink-182. I was like totally up in that world.
Oh yeah, same here. I love that. I still love that world.
I know, it's so fun. Again, it's like it's the best. So yeah, and so we were writing a bunch of songs like that, but I was the singer, so it like made very little sense. And then occasionally we would throw in like my emotional, like sentimental ballads. So it was like a weird, very bizarre time. But we had such fun. We really had a blast. And I still play the drum kit that Dave, like we bought it from Dave for like $100 when we were starting my old band Pearl and the Beard. I was the percussionist in that band, and we're like, oh, I guess we need some drums. So I called up Dave Napiorski from Dorks and was like, hey, can I buy your drums? Dorks will always be.
And so then you played drums for this next band?
Yes. Well, we so that was actually quite a jump later. So
okay.
Dorks was a
very
hot
high
and
school
short
little
moment. Circa, I want to say circa like 98. Yeah, maybe like 94 to 96. That was when Dorks was happening. And then you know, I went to college. I went to art school actually because I knew in my core that I was like, I'm the musician that the kind of music that I want to make, I don't need to go to a conservatory to make it. So I'm going to do the next favorite thing that I like to do, which is make art. So I'm going to go to art school. That's where I'll learn how to get a job and pay my bills. And then I'll do music, you know, find a way to make. Meanwhile, like what guidance counselor like let that happen? I don't know, but I was very tenacious, and it ended up working out great because I ended up getting a degree in fiber arts, so like textiles, and I was a professional knitter for about 15 years.
Oh wow!
It was wild. So it was a job that I took with me on the road with my next band, which wasn't until 2007, really early 2008, we started Pearl and the Beard, which was after I'd graduated and moved to Brooklyn for a few years. So it's all connected, you know.
Yeah, tell me. Well, so you wait. You went to school you got a job knitting, like
I did
for 15 years. What would you knit? Like scarves for people?
Tons of scarves. Like, actually, Martha Stewart has one of the scarves that I made.
Does she really?
She sure does. Yeah.
Oh
she put
man.
out a yarn line with Lion Brand. I was working with for Lion Brand yarn at the time. You can find them at Michael's Crafts and Walmart and things like that. But yeah, it was a bunch of different gigs, you know, sometimes more steady than others, but in general, it was either doing production, say for like designers. So let's say like a small designer would have a relationship with a boutique and they'd say, okay, we have an order of, we need 10 dresses in size 2, 5 and size 4, whatever. And we would just fill the orders. Then the work that allowed me to tour more, which was amazing, was the stuff more for like Lion Brand and occasional freelance clients where you're just making samples. So you make one of the item, and then in Lion Brand's case, they would photograph it and put it in the catalog, and they're selling the yarn, not the product.
No, I see.
Right. So it's like
so you would make something out of the yarn, and then they would use whatever you made as like you can make this
exactly
with this color yarn. Okay,
that's right. You need 8 skeins of our beautiful homespun to create this luxurious blanket. And
you ever do voiceover?
I do voiceover. Actually. That's another new thing to add to like the weird bananas resume that I have. But it was wild because that was kind of how the cover Pearl and the Beard had an album. Our album Killing the Darlings had a 3-person sweater on the cover of it, which I actually knit, which I have in my closet.
Oh, you actually made it? Like all of you wearing it?
That's right. Yeah, people were like, how did you Photoshop that? I was like, girl, I knit that thing, and it took a long time. But they would tease me, basically. My bandmates would tease me because I would be in the back of the van. I would show up for the tour like on day 1 with a bunch of yarn, and then I would come at the end of the 2 weeks. I would have like a bunch of scarves and sweaters and stuff, and they would joke. They were like, one of these days you're gonna knit us a sweater that like fits all 3 of us. And I was like, is that a dare? Because I'm gonna do that.
I will do this.
And I did. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah, it's all connected.
So Pearl and the Beard was your first like band out of
Yeah,
out of the
absolutely.
dorks.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
Okay. And you
10.
guys had a record, did some touring. Did you get signed to a label, or like how long was that a thing for?
We were a band for 8 years, and we put out
Wow.
3 full-length albums and 3 EPs. And at first, we were under Family Records, but then we moved on to just become independent artists. And yeah, it was an amazing time. We got to tour with Ani DeFranco, which is how I got connected to Righteous Babe
Righteous Babes.
Records.
Oh, wow.
Totally. And we toured, you know, mainly US and some UK, but it was really just a blast.
Wow. Okay. And then that band toured with Honored Franco, and that's how you made that connection there. And then
Exactly. Yeah.
she never put out anything for that band, just once you decided to go solo.
Yeah, it just, we kept in touch over the years. We just really connected. She's just such an amazing human being. And we had opened for her several times, and on one of the last tour dates that we knew that this was going to kind of be like the end of the road for us because we were going our separate ways.
Hmm.
I just kind of off the cuff was asked her. I was like, "Hey, would you want to like write something together someday?" And just in this very kind of leap of faith moment.
Hmm.
And she was like, "Yeah, sure." And she like later that night like sent me some stuff, and I was like, uh what's
Wow.
happening, but okay, like I'll go with this. So then we just kept in touch from there. And she wrote a bridge for one of my songs on my first solo EP, which I released independently. And then 5 years later, here we are. And these things really just take time, I think. And she was really taking a big leap of faith on me because she, I don't know, honestly, I don't know why, but it's too late to ask her now. So she's already signed the contract, so I'm not going to ask
Right.
her. The paperwork has been done. I'm not going to bring it up.
That's funny. Well, so she sent you songs that she had been working on, and you helped write or help write those songs, or was it just kind of like,
No,
here's what I have going on? And
it was a very casual exchange, and it was this really beautiful kind of moment of trust, really, of just kind of playing me some ideas. And yeah, so she contributed to several of my songs, which was really awesome.
wow, that's cool. And then she put out that first EP, or you said it was independently done?
Yeah, the first EP I just promoted on my own,
And
and
then
that was 5 years ago.
wow. And then how quickly after that did you sign with her label?
Uh, 5 years later, yeah.
Oh, wow. So it was just that process in between then and now was just
Took
you
a
working,
while.
yeah, and working with her a little bit, or like how, so tell me what happened in the past 5 years, like from
Oh
then to
boy.
now. Is it writing that record? Like
Well, you're gonna
musically?
if you listen to the album, you'll find out what happened in the past
Oh,
5 years
okay.
because it's all there. But I'm sorry, when I know you've
Yeah.
listened to it already. But yeah, it was a lot of just kind of getting back on my feet after some pretty intense life shifts that had happened.
Mhm.
And musically, I was doing my best to create the music that I needed to hear at the time, but I didn't have a ton of bandwidth for the hustle at that moment. Really, I'd had to kind of like figure out a way to find a place to live and how to pay my bills and just be a person living in the world.
Mhm.
And at the time, for a while, it didn't leave a lot of extra energy for me to promote myself. So it was a bummer, but also kind of a necessary. I think of it as this kind of like incubation period that I went into of just like, okay, I have to completely reevaluate and reassess what I'm doing here. And thankfully, so many people offered me support. And I was totally still doing shows and playing music in that time. I just wasn't really like you know doing the hustle and doing the
Mhm.
super super networking thing. But all the while, I mean, meanwhile I say that and I'm like kind of eye rolling myself because it's in some ways like completely not true because I was also like every like 6 to 9 months I would check in and be like, hey Lonnie, like here's because I was working on Push, which is for string quartet, as I mentioned, and
Mhm.
that takes a long time. So
Oh
it was
yeah.
kind of all in service of like waiting for Push to be ready. So first it was like get the demos out to the arrangers. Then it was okay, who's going to work on what song? Now it's who's going to actually write all of the the sheet music out for the musicians because I don't know how to do any of that stuff. Then it was how are we going to do the beats? Okay, now we actually have to get the quartet together. Like it literally just logistically took 5 years because I was also funding it myself. So I
Oh
would have
my.
to wait until I like had enough money to like
Right,
pay
right.
people. So I like got jobs. I just worked a lot, and I'm still at a job that I was working at. But I would like, okay, got like enough in the bank now. I can pay the next arranger, or
Right.
okay, time for the strings to come in finally. and it took a while, but it was worth the wait. Totally worth it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So during those 5 years, were did was she you said you message her every once in a while, like
Yeah.
how much feedback were you getting from her on the songs that you're sending? Or like
Oh,
you
that's a
said you
sweet
had 20
question.
songs, but like
I did.
how many of those did you run by her?
That's a really sweet question. I love that. She actually heard all of those 20 and was so supportive. She was just like, "This is amazing. I love these tracks." And
Wow.
for a minute, she was like, "Oh, why don't you like come down to New Orleans, where she's based now, and we could record it like this, and I could hear this being this really intimate thing." Like she was really in it at the very beginning stages,
Hmm.
and I have some I got something, I don't know why, but I was just like, "I'm sorry, Ani DeFrago, this album is for string quartet, and that's not my vision for this." And I like basically told her no, thank you. But
Yeah.
then years later came back, was like, "Hey, remember that time when I told you I didn't want to do it like you wanted to do it? Well, I did it how I wanted to do it. Here it is." And then
Want to put it out?
yeah, so it was pretty gutsy,
Yeah. Well,
if I
what
do.
was the idea behind the string quartet and getting that whole arrangement done for the record?
Yeah. Wow. Well, that was again like kind of connecting to this intuitive knowing and this
Hmm.
psychic sense that I have. It literally was, and in the psychic community, sometimes they'll call it a download, where all of a sudden you just like have an idea, and you're like, God, because now you cannot not think of it that way.
Yeah,
You know
right.
what I mean?
Can't forget
And
about
it's
it.
you can't unhave that idea. So
Yeah.
that's what happened. I remember I was like drinking coffee, and I was like, "Oh God, the band's over. Uh, I don't have a job. I don't have a place to live. I have all these demos. What am I gonna do? Do I even want to do music? I don't even know who I am anymore." And then all of a sudden, it was like, "You will record this album for string quartet," and I was like, "What is happening?" And then I was like, "Okay, I guess that's what I'm doing." So I felt like the Blues Brothers, like I'm on a mission from God. Like I don't know what else to tell you.
That was just it, and you
Yeah,
knew you had to do it.
that's right. So, and I knew it
Wow.
was going to take the time it took, and then I
Mhm.
wasn't in a rush. I was like, this will happen when it happens, and it'll be the right place, right time, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, but not playing those instruments, you could still hear what you wanted it to sound like in your
I could
head.
not. No, that's a great question. I could not, which was partially why I um, was excited to work on it in this way, because as a solo artist now, having been with Pearl and the Beard for so long, we were very collaborative, and I missed that about the writing process, right? Because to me, a good song, you can play it, just singing it on a street corner, and it can move you to tears, or you could have a full symphony and it moves
Mhm.
you in a different way, right? So knowing that I had the capacity to play my own songs either on ukulele or, occasionally random other instruments, um, I was like, that's just not doing it for me enough. So the idea of turning it over to other artists who were trained professionals, composers, like Emily from Pearl and the Beard, she plays cello, and she was one of the main contributors to arrangements on the album.
Oh, cool.
Knowing that they would have their own spin on it. So I gave it to everyone and said, do whatever you want. Like,
Mhm.
truly, I want you to surprise me. So it was this very much like give and take. Like, there were only really, I think, two songs that I made any real adjustments to and said, "Hey, can we like change this section or something?"
Mhm.
You know.
Wow.
And also my co-producer Sam McCormley, he was really instrumental in, he did four of the arrangements, and he also did all the beats on the album. So he was great at like working with how do we push this and transcend it from what it is to just like ukulele version 2.
Mhm.
Now we have this amazing instrumentation. How do we change this? So it was just so exciting to like go, okay, I have no idea what they're going to do.
Right.
Let's see what comes back. And that was that.
Did that change how you sang any of the songs, or did it kind of change how you perceive the songs?
100% on both accounts. The songs completely changed meaning for me. They just were like completely uplifted in this incredible way. So it was definitely, it was a huge, uh, I was just so excited by it. It was incredible.
Mhm. And when did the record get finished? Is it done, like being recorded, or are you still working on it? Okay.
Yes, it's done.
And so you spend 5 years working on this record, and then the whole world shuts down.
Yeah.
Was the album done prior to that? Did you get a a message about it? Like, I don't know. Like you spend 5 years putting this record together.
Mhm.
Now the world shuts down. You can't really tour it.
That's right. That's
Um,
right.
so tell me about that. How did that affect you? I mean, it
Yeah.
obviously affected you directly, but where were you at with the
Yeah.
record when it started happening?
I finished tracking the vocals, so doing the last in-person stuff,
Mm-hmm.
about 3 weeks before shutdown.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was wild. And there were no like cosmic downloads in terms of like there's going to be a global
Right.
pandemic. Like it wasn't that. But there were certain
Get
nudges
this
that I did have.
finished.
Yeah, you better do this.
Get it done
girl.
before March.
Truly. Yeah, we finished like late February. I'm not even joking. It
Oh
was
my
wild.
gosh.
Yeah, but one of the main inspirations to get it moving along was that Sam, my co-producer, his wife was expecting their second child, and
Oh,
he
okay.
called me and he was like, "Hey, by the way, I forgot to tell you we're pregnant again." And I was like, "Sam, you're coming to New York because he lives in DC. You're coming to New York. We got to finish this record because otherwise it's going to take us another 5 years because you're going to have a toddler and an infant." And so thank you, Eliza, for shepherding this piece into the world. And then the video, for example, for the Brave Ones, which was the second single we put out, that one we shot on the beach in Coney Island. And again, it was like a timing thing where I was like, okay, I just kind of knew. I was like, we have to shoot it this day.
Mhm.
And I don't know why, but I was like, it has to be this day. Whoever shows up, shows up. I'm not going to change it because somebody goes, oh, I can't do that day. If they can't do that day, then they're just not going to be in the video. So it was like whoever can be there on that specific day, that's who will be in it.
Mhm.
And that's what we did. And the lighting was perfect. The water was the perfect temperature. And literally, had we waited, another year, like another summer, because it's hard to film on the beach in any
In the
other
winter.
season than summer. We wouldn't have been able to do it. And because that song
Wow.
is very sensual, and we were like literally like rubbing up on each other and getting all intimate, and it just would not have happened. So
That's great that you're able to get that in, and
Yeah.
the record done. I mean,
yeah,
right under the gun there. It sounds like.
totally. And then it went into the mixing phase right at the top of shutdown. So
Oh, okay.
that was actually kind of a great thing because it really carried me through. It gave me some purpose,
Mhm.
gave me something to do, and it made me feel connected to my work, even though it was all very kind of, it's not really tangible. You're really just sitting there doing a lot of listening and giving
Mhm.
feedback. But my mixing engineer Nadine Isa was just incredible, and got everything so quickly and just put so much effort into it. It was amazing.
That's amazing. Well, tell me about this Christmas song. Was this something you had done
Oh.
prior, or was this? What was the idea behind the Christmas song?
I'm laughing. I love this Christmas song. This was a collaboration. Really, the song was written by my friend Stan Satlin.
Okay.
And so myself and my friends Uncle Monster Face, which is a band primarily of my friend Marty Allen and Dan Brennan, who Dan recorded all of the vocals on Push. So we've been,
Oh, wow.
Dan and Marty and I have been collaborating for many, many years. Marty and I dated for 3 of those years. So it's like we're just old friends. But yeah, Stan and I met through Deborah Rappaport, who I don't know if you're familiar with the advanced style movement. So like it's this amazing blog. Definitely check it out.
Okay.
This amazing blogger, this guy named Ari, he started it up. So to showcase women over 60 and how stylish they are. So he was like a
Okay.
fashion street photographer in New York, and he would only photograph women over 60.
That's
And it
awesome.
created this, it's amazing. And it created this huge wave of these fashionistas who, are later in life and just so passionate and fabulous. And now they're being given a spotlight. And it's actually opened a lot of doors to representation in modeling and all these things, which is awesome. All that is to say, Deborah's an amazing artist. We clicked right away when we met. And then she introduced me to her partner, Stan. Stan is an amazing songwriter. Stan had this in the vault for years and years and years and years and years. Wanted somebody to produce it and kind of bring it to life. played it for me. I was like, oh my God, this is the best Christmas song ever. Played it for Marty and Dan. They were super into it. So we basically kind of like zhuzhed Stan's demo into a kind of like, gave it a little structure. Dan recorded all the instruments, we produced it. And then so between those three entities, we kind of consider it like this beautiful collaboration. So it's been super fun, and it's horrible because you can't get it out of your head. So it's like hard to talk about it because I start to hear it and then I
start singing it.
It's in there. Forget it. Like, it's over. There goes your day.
That's awesome. Do you have a date set for the record?
We're gonna release it on January 29th, 2021.
Very, very cool. And then what about like live streams? Is that what you've been doing to kind of promote?
I am not.
Are you not?
I'm going to be very vulnerable right now. I'm scared of them. I don't like them. I did one, and I didn't care for the experience. I feel very raw and too seen. Like I don't have enough connection to my audience, and I don't like, it feels like I'm in outer space, which you would think that would be right up my alley, but I actually, singing really grounds me, and doing it virtually made me feel very weirdly untethered. So we're still brainstorming some ways to kind of bring the material into this age of, not knowing if we can be in person or not. But one of the things I'm hoping to do is just, through social media and building my fan base, is to try and just get some community engagement projects going, because the idea of like seeing live music, it's like, yeah, people leave their houses to like be part of something and come together as a group. So how do we bring that to each other without actually leaving our houses? It's like, well, rather than just me performing to someone that anyone can watch, which I'm sure I'll do some of for sure. I'll rally, but what are some ways that we can root in this cause of healing through radical self-love as a community through music, to really blossom and help each other through this, unknown time, and see, how we can connect.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Jocelyn, for talking with me today. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
What a treat.
I know. I do have one more question for you. I want to know, you probably already know what I'm going to ask you, but I'm kidding. Do you have any advice for aspiring artists?
I do. My advice for aspiring artists is don't stop. Take no shit. Do your thing. Don't stop, take no shit, do your thing. Like, that's it. I mean, and be patient, because it's worth the wait for it to be right. There are ways to be creative in your everyday life. Did you put a smiley face on your pancake? Did you write a letter to your grandma? Like, we can always find ways to like nourish our day-to-day creativity. But when it comes to really like hunkering down and saying, oh, this is the music I want to make, or this is the project I want to do, don't compromise your vision, because it's worth it if you just can hang in there and wait. So don't stop, and also like lead with your heart. The project that you want to do the most, that you're like, oh, but I can't because of this, or like, oh, but I need my job, the one that you like, that little voice, do the thing, do the project. Let your brain work for you. Your brain is the lackey. Your brain's not the CEO. Your heart is the founder and the CEO. So let your heart place the vision. And then once you're clear on the vision, which you already know, you can't, BS yourself. You already know what you want, so don't let your brain trick you into thinking that you don't know, or that you're not good enough, because you are. Bringing it backwards.